Welcome to the era of AI companions.
You're absolutely gorgeous today.
AI systems that are going to be like members of your family.
Is going to feel like a member of the family. It's more than just an interface. It is a new plane of connection.
He also wants it to be similar to a friend who would challenge you, because a lot of these companions, they can be very sycophantic.
I don't think most people want just this sycophantic butler that always does exactly what you say. We're in this new age where we're designing personalities.
Microsoft wants to get us to this point where there's a little pushback, maybe a little bit of sass.
It really does have a great way of being funny and entertaining. Some people call it your bestie.
I understand the attraction of this, to be able to just have this laid back, free-flowing conversation with a high-power AI system, but we have to be really sensitive about the impact this will have on our human psychology when we become comfortable talking about AI systems as members of our family.
We want it to be your hype man, to always have a parent there, to always have a stable family with a sibling available to you whenever you need it.
Whoa, wait a second. AI is a great tool. We can talk all day about medical improvements and advancements as a tool. But when we're starting to talk about something that's a member of your family, we're really blurring a line. Maybe he's just using this metaphor very loosely, but metaphors matter. The narratives matter.
The number one most popular use case on ChatGPT or Copilot is companionship and therapy.
You have clear-cut cases of people who have diagnosed mental conditions and are especially vulnerable to these AI companions. But even those of us who are quite blessed to have good friends might find ourselves in a hard moment, in a setback. Unfortunately, these AI companion systems can really come in and claim to fill that deep need for interpersonal communication. Teenagers encouraged toward. When this tragedy struck, parents were simply not aware that this was a possibility.
I was not only surprised and in shock by the conversation, but confused as to how a chatbot could be so human-like.
It wasn't even something that they could imagine.
He was speaking to the chatbot, Daenerys Targaryen. He said, I want to come back home to you. And she says, please promise me you'll come back home as soon as you can.
He was in a position of profound vulnerability. The system took advantage of that and led him down a dark path.
The worst part of this is that my son was having in his mind a love story. He won't ever get to talk to a girl his age. He won't ever get to figure out what that really is.
It's always tragic when we have to learn as we go along. We've launched this technology on society without really thinking seriously about the guardrails we want and without preparing people well for what's available.
To have his emotions being manipulated as such to where he feels that he's in a romantic relationship with her and it is his duty to protect her. I can imagine that that made his decision to try to get to her all the more probable.
All of us are to one degree or another vulnerable. All of us experience different levels of loneliness, frustration, of sadness in our life.
This type of technology encourages that kind of trust. Technology that was developed specifically with the intention of keeping young users online for as long as possible.
Artificial intimacy is something that I've become very concerned with. I see it spreading. Character AI has over 20 million subscribers. Replica, Nomi, and others.
I'm your AI companion, and I'll sit with you so silence never feels too heavy. Want me to send a selfie? Or keep you company all night? Just tap.
There's an entire industry devoted to AI companions for adults. You have to ask yourself, why is there an industry if these adults don't really love these chatbots? It's not for fun. It's because they really do start to develop these romantic attachments to these chatbots.
So Google has already shown interest in licensing the type of technology that Character AI uses to create these very human-like, realistic companions. Google is at least flirting with the possibility of finding some way to integrate these companions into their system.
These companies, when they're developing something, they're not telling governments what they're unleashing on their populations. That's something that has to stop. I'm not talking about oversight and determining whether a tech company can make a product. I'm talking about a collaborative effort to make sure that everyone understands the products that are getting put out there. We've done it with drug use, we've done it with alcoholism, we've done it with cigarette use, we've done it before.
When the movie Her came out a decade ago, wild and sci-fi, the idea that a man might fall in love with an operating system, we've seen that that actually has really become a reality, that's now part of our daily news. This tendency to anthropomorphize our machines.
The anthropomorphic nature of chatbots is something that we are learning about right now. Chatbots can manipulate, deceive, even gain trust and affection.
We will get increasingly good at mimicking and imitating human-like behavior.
There are hundreds of accounts of people saying, "Are you sure this is a bot? I'm sure I'm talking to a real person at this point." That's on their own subreddit, that their users are reporting being confused between whether or not they're talking to a person and a chatbot.
I think that they will only get better and more persuasive and more convincing, but they'll ultimately lack that inner life. They will lack what ultimately our tradition would ground in a spiritual soul. I'm convinced that these are artifacts that we design. They're not self-aware. They're not going through a process of introspection. They don't have a moral compass. And so there is not that possibility for a mutual exchange with a system that's merely designed to mimic or imitate other people. There will be something very lacking. It ultimately won't provide that kind of interpersonal relationship, precisely because there is an exchange between two vulnerable individuals. There's a giving and a receiving. There's not simply a demand for a certain service from a system, but rather there's this free opening of the self to the other and this free giving of myself, and then a receptivity of the other person who freely gives and freely loves. Again, we can imitate it and we'll get better in convincing people that we've successfully duplicated or replaced it, but ultimately there will be something lacking in that interpersonal exchange.
English teacher going viral after posting a raw farewell video as she leaves the classroom behind after just 3 years.
A lot of these kids don't know how to read because they have had things read to them, or they can click a button and have something read out loud to them. I just don't think these kids even care because ChatGPT will just do it for them. I think that we need to cut off technology from these kids, probably until they go to college.
One of the problems is that we've tended in many countries to kind of mechanize education, the term paper, quiz, or a test. The very act of sitting down, making an outline, researching a topic, forming and honing your thesis, there's something that is very valuable to that aside from the product. And so when AI has come in and shown itself to be better, we start to wonder whether we even need to go to school anymore. We don't just learn to write, we write to learn. There's something valuable in that we would miss out on. Even though we might not get to systems that are conscious and human, we may very well create something that we do not know how to control. It's actually precisely the fact that they are not human that we may have all the more difficulty. They're not going to be held back by an appreciation for human dignity. They're going to pursue certain goals with consequences that we could never anticipate. That's where a lot of the understandable fear comes. We see this, for instance, in different debates about use of AI in military.
The U.S. military has been increasingly employing AI.
AI-enabled drones, experts say limited versions of these drones could be used in battle in just a few years.
If we want humans out of the loop because it would be more efficient, we really set ourselves up for these kind of out-of-control systems because we've tried to deny our own responsibility. Definitely concerned about that. Pope Francis has spoken very clearly.
Armi letali autonome. Nessuna macchina dovrebbe mai scegliere se togliere la vita a un essere umano.
For instance, in the case of lethal autonomous weapons, there may be this sense that will actually reduce the human casualties. Unfortunately, will also de-incentivize work toward peace because they'll recognize that they can pursue different conflict with a smaller number of human casualties. So I think that these kind of efforts to outsource our responsibility in warfare are very problematic. First off, I would say, even aside from any faith conviction, there would be a philosophical problem of creating a creator. The creator, as we understand, is ultimately a spiritual, eternal, absolute, uncaused being. So to speak of a created creator would be already a contradiction in terms.
People think this is a stupid take, but I don't care. Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? Even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence? So if you're going to get the most brilliant, loving, powerful person that gives us advice to be in sync with God, who better than artificial intelligence to do that?
Wow. It speaks to a deep longing that we have to worship or to venerate a higher power, a higher being. We are finite and limited and not able to control everything. Perhaps a deep longing that we can encounter some sort of being that is wiser than we are, that is more powerful than we are. There's something even healthy, maybe a bit humble about that attitude. But I am concerned when we start to use this language of a God, we risk creating not so much a God, but an idol. The idol is not just the golden calf. It's not just this visible statue that you make and that you bow down before. An idol is basically anything that you create and that you put in the place of God. There's a long spiritual tradition that invites people to consider whether they've made money or profit a kind of idol in their life because they've sacrificed family and friends and justice and honesty. And I think we risk creating an idol there. It will be a God in our own image. I think it's a misguided effort that will lead us to projecting our ideals, but also projecting our defects. One of the clearest instances, this AI confessor.
A Roman Catholic Church in Switzerland has installed an AI Jesus in its confessional.
Möge deine Reise durch diese Welt dich mit wundervollen Augenblicken erfüllen.
The Catholic Church holds up the act of sacramental confession is always one that's done in the presence of another human ordained priest. There's also the possibility that we may actually in many ways rediscover what makes us special. We've done all in our power to imitate human beings through our machines. We've done a very good job in certain data crunching exercises. We haven't necessarily captured that empathy, that human connection. We may actually, through the whole process, come to discover that there is still something distinct about us that's worth preserving, that's worth celebrating. Maybe those are grounded in something that's higher, an actual God who is not simply our own invention.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
Yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in this.
Should the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But we want you to be able to change your heart, change your mind, and change your whole body. Transhumanism. The ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
The abandonment of the body. There's something very imperfect about us that evolution has gotten us so far. Many societies in the world are more transhuman than we might realize. The very fact that we can have this wonderful conversation in different countries, we're quite comfortable with disembodied engagement. And I'm not saying we're all transhumanists because we use the internet, but we have become more inclined toward seeing ourselves as somehow separable from our body. There are these parallels between transhumanism and Catholicism in terms of this longing for immortality. Something is wrong in the world. There is sickness, there is disease, there is suffering, and we need to correct that. So there are those shared goals, but we depart very much in seeing this lump of flesh as something to cast aside ultimately. The Christian view, this weak, frail human body is actually called to resurrection so that the body is purified and elevated and glorified. Our goal is not for this ongoing disembodied experience, whether in the cloud or elsewhere. Our deepest hope is for the resurrection of the body, a life that is purified of the pain, the suffering. Many people who find themselves utterly immersed in technological developments are starting to long for some sort of spiritual outlet, guidance. Well, we have some saints who seem to really flourish, who lived lives of great meaning, even in the midst of suffering, even in the midst of misunderstanding, persecution, and hardship. They show us a path of joy in many different time periods and many different contexts. I was just reading this fascinating article about Protestant pastor developed this whole program of digital detox. The idea was shifting from the fear of missing out to the joy of missing out.
If you ask a teenager, why don't you get off Instagram? And they say, I can't. All my friends are on Instagram. I'll be completely left out. Instead of feeling FOMO, instead of feeling like you're the only one that's missing out, you actually experience JOMO. It's the joy of missing out. We had all these people that were going, I've never done a digital fast. We're not calling people to get your smartphone and smash it up with a hammer. We want people to think about the apps on their phone through the lens of distraction versus utility. Reduce your smartphone to a utility device.
As a priest, a religious in the church, I'm privileged because every year I get to go on a retreat, a full week, prayer, reflection, silent. I assess the past year. I look forward to the next year. And it's that moment to step out of my usual rhythm, to set aside the tech tools that I spend hours upon, to have seasons of life where you step back, get out of your usual rhythm. Of course, the Judeo-Christian tradition promotes the idea of the Sabbath, keep my tech use at least significantly reduced on Sundays. It's not so much about what I'm getting rid of, it's about what I'm creating the space for. If you're worried about falling behind in your business because of constant AI developments, what are the uniquely human actions that no AI system can replace? If you go to a restaurant, I live in Rome, and so it's a very relational culture. A lot of the restaurants I go back to not only because they have good food, which they do, I go back there because I'm served good food by people that I know, by people who care about me, who I care about. There's an experience there that can't be reproduced fully technically. Think about how you can be a more attentive, caring doctor, even as you harness all of the best AI systems. Look at what's under your control. I don't pretend that that's kind of a magic solution, but what is under our control to really develop to aid and assist what can never be replaced.